Hi, I'm Reed Peterson, and welcome to Grief Refuge. It warms my heart to know that you're here listening today, for you see, Grief Refuge isn't your typical talk about grief podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Grief Refuge is about helping you find peace and purpose after your loss. This podcast is about validating your grief-related thoughts and feelings, taking time to reflect, and honoring your self-care. At Grief Refuge, you will learn healthy ways to manage grief. You will also feel comforted, hopeful, and a sense of peace in regards to your loss and your life moving forward. Through the stories and conversations shared on this podcast, my intention is to provide companionship, insight, and a soothing voice to help you navigate the darker feelings that grief brings up. Grief can be terrible, and grief is really hard. I'm glad you're here, and I promise to do everything I can to provide the best support to you. Before we begin, let's go over a little housekeeping. Because of the depth and the nature of this topic, it may be more beneficial to not multitask while listening. Rather, I invite you to use this time for your self-care and your personal reflection. Use this time to relax and allow your grief-related feelings to run their course. Use this time to mourn your loss. Also, this podcast publishes episodes twice a month. When you're grieving, that's a lot of time in the in-between of each episode. If you need more support, download the Grief Refuge app. The Grief Refuge app provides daily support to help soothe and comfort you throughout this difficult journey. You can get the Grief Refuge app from your phone's app store by simply searching Grief Refuge. Thank you, and let's move on to today's topic. The U.S. military serves as defense of the state and its interests against external armed threats. Many members lose their lives as part of their active duty, other types of service, accidents, and other causes. What happens when every day becomes a memorial for the families of the fallen? Today, I'm sharing a conversation with Laura Herzog, founder of Honoring Our Fallen. Laura shares more about her organization and the services and types of care it provides. Before this interview, I never had a conversation with Laura. What I learned from Laura was that there's a power greater than humanity moving through her, and that force is for providing random acts of love, networking, support, and shining light on others, especially when a griever needs it most. Enjoy this important conversation. Laura, welcome to Grief Refuge. It is an honor to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Okay, so Laura, I'm going to be very transparent. I don't know a lot about what you're up to these days, but I do know that you're doing a lot to help what sounds like families of the fallen. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about Honoring Our Fallen?
Honoring Our Fallen is a nonprofit organization, and we are an organization that works side by side with military, active duty military, casualty officers, and police, first responders when we're called upon. And what we do is we provide third-party support, and third-party support that assists the casualty officer in providing services to the families as they are supporting in their role as a government casualty officer to support during what would be called as the dignified arrival, funeral, and burial for active duty service members and first responders and such.
Thanks. That seems like very important work. I hear that as somebody who's not indirect background with the military. I do have family members who served mostly in the Army, but well, I guess my grandfather was in the Navy too. But what I will say is, on somebody from the outside looking in, it almost sounds like you have found an opportunity or a way to help people who are almost receiving orders for transporting our fallen heroes. Is that correct?
Well, kind of. So when an active duty service member passes away while serving active duty, meaning that they're currently serving in the military, whether it be active duty, reserve, component, there's all kinds of weird acronyms and parameters within the military. But basically, someone who's not retired, they don't have a DD 214 saying that they served in the military, and they're who we all just celebrated on Veterans Day. Like the veterans who served and they're out of the military, we honor them and we celebrate them on Veterans Day. The people that honoring our fallen serves are the families, the surviving families of those that are left behind when their loved one dies while actively serving in the military. So whether it be the families of the Marines that we recently served that were killed in Kabul, or the families that we served of some Marines that recently, or just over a year ago, were killed off the coast of San Clemente in the AAV accident, or the soldier's family that we served, the soldier that just died in a helicopter crash or a motorcycle accident. And unfortunately, those that while serving active duty in the military, they commit suicide or they have some kind of other thing that ends their life. That family is assigned a casualty officer. That casualty officer works with that family to provide all the military things that are promised to that service member when they raise their hand and take that oath and sign that blank check. Serving in our military, the casualty officer handles the military aspects of it. What we do is we come in alongside of that casualty officer and work with them to help kind of fill in some gaps and reduce the costs at the funeral home by providing free services to those families and help alleviate some of the costs to enable the family to fit what they want for their loved one into the budget that is given to them by the military for that funeral.
I appreciate that deeper dive. I had the opportunity to listen to you speak to what sounded like a family member of one of the fallen, and it's at the time of a recording, it's around the Thanksgiving holiday time in the US, and it sounded like you were gifting her a turkey and also a gift card to one of the local markets. And is that some of the services that are specific to things being provided to the families?
Yes, partially. So we work alongside other nonprofits collaboratively, and so what was happening when we initially, before we started really the dive in deeper part of the conversation, is a mom of a fallen Marine had come here by the office. We have a partnership with a veterans advocacy group and the Volunteers of America, and what they do is they provide us with Thanksgiving bags for us to provide to families, and it's a bag of everything that they would need to put together their Thanksgiving dinner, along with a gift card for them to go to the local grocery store to get their turkey or their ham or any additional fixings that they may need that they don't have. And that's kind of part of one of our programs, Random Act of Love. We get those donations from other organizations, and then what we do is distribute them out to the families of the fallen.
It's really wonderful, and it sounds like it's very heart-opening work and selfless work and providing tons of acts of service. Is this something that you originally came up with the idea for?
Yeah, yes, it is, and I guess I was a public affairs officer as a civilian. I never wore the uniform of the military. I saw that there was a gap, and as a Christian and as someone who believes in serving other people, I came towards the end of that 2-year government contract that I was on, and I saw that there was a gap that we could fill to provide support, provide networking, shine God's light and love into the world, and so I did. I started honoring our fallen 12 years ago with our board of directors, and with the mindset of how can we serve others, and how can we help, how can we be of service and lend a hand and fill in the gaps and make what these families who, every day is Memorial Day for the families that we serve, and how can we help support them, honor them in their journey of grief, and to provide something so that they know that their sacrifice isn't forgotten. As we all, whether it's military or not, as we all lose our loved ones, and we lay them to rest, whether it's our 93-year-old grandmother or our 19-year-old child, for whatever ever that case that may be. you know a lot of people are around, in the beginning, and they're there to help. And then after all the funerals are done, and all the services are done, and everything's done, then these families are left to cope and to somehow try to find some kind of a new normal, and it's not even a normal, because their life will never be the same because of their loss. Yet at the same time, how do we come alongside them and support them in their journey to carry on?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really well said. Are there things that you find yourself day in and day out feeling very proud of in the work that you do?
Yeah, knowing that you make a difference. So, that text from that family member, whether it be a social media post or that little visit that happened just before our interview with that mom, and being able to just embrace her as she prepares for the holidays. The holidays are a very, very rough time for everyone. It's a difficult time for multiple different reasons, and just to be able to remind that person that they're not alone, that they have somewhere to turn, and that, in a nutshell, they're not alone and they have somewhere to turn. And if we as an organization can't support them, then we can work with other organizations that are out there that provide whatever service maybe that they need. And so it's about bridging gaps, and it's about working in collaboration with other organizations, other charities, other businesses, and providing a network. And it's a community. It takes a village, and we all have a calling on our life. And I'm blessed that at 50 years old that I found my calling, and I will somehow, in some way, in some capacity, continue to serve these families until the last breath that I have here.
Mm, that's so beautiful, Laura. Thank you. Thank you for your service. A little bit of a weighted question, and I say this from my own experience, so I apologize if this sounds like projection on your part. It often feels like there's a lot of heaviness and a lot of weight itself in doing the work of grief support. If that resonates with you at times, what are some of the things you do to help find more of the light or experience more of the joy and the continued act of service that you provide?
To find the joy myself.
Yeah, like I know there's purpose and meaning in the work that you do, but if it resonates, as far as me saying, perhaps there's times where you feel like, oh, more grief, here we go again. Sometimes as humans, we continue to have those experiences where no matter how selfless we are or how much we want to give, we can also realize that we get a little bit drained ourselves. Now, that may not be true for you. I don't know. But if it is true for you, I'm super curious. Like what are some of your self-care things that you do in the times that you perhaps need that like energy or that drive again?
That's a great question. So I I dove in feet first into starting this organization, and in the 12 years it does, and the grief is taxing. And what I can say, because I am asked the question almost on a daily basis from someone somewhere that I either bump into, or there's a conversation or something that says, I don't know how you do what you do. How do you do what you do? And my answer has, and I had to spend a lot of time in prayer and in just quiet time finding what the answer to that question is, because at many times I had to ask that same question of myself, because people would say, do you ever sleep? Like, how do you do this? And the answer became very, very evident to me, probably I'd say about 6 months to a year ago, when I was able to say, I don't do it. God does it. I just show up. And he gives me the strength, the endurance, the stamina, the peace beyond all understanding, and the ability to do what he called me to do. And it went back to something that running a nonprofit and starting a nonprofit from the ground up. And it'd be like a business owner that maybe is listening to this, that you start your own business and you're like, oh, how am I going to do this? And then the first 3 months you're paying all your staff and you can't even pay yourself, and what am I doing? And the answer really came evident through quiet time and prayer. I always say that when God closes a door, and I can look back at every door that he closed for this organization and for me, it's because he wants to have a conversation with me in the hallway. And where he opens doors, he provides. And so it came to a summation for me that where God calls, he provides. And whether that means that it's financial supplying, whether that means energy, stamina, the ability to not be overwhelmed with that grief, which is what your original question was. And he provides all that. And some of the ways that he does that for me, I do go, I do see a counselor. My counselor, she says, well, she's a believer, and she also is a counselor to many ministers, pastors, first responders. She says, you're much like a minister and a social worker all at the same time. And so I go to her, and I have the ability to have those conversations. I have a great board of directors and mentors and people that are in my circle that if I need to, talk something out with, to help it make sense. I have a great support at my home with my husband and my family. And I think that the most important thing for anyone to do that works in the world of grief or support is there's two things: boundaries and balance. And those are the most critical things. So I've been able to set boundaries within my service to others, and boundaries that keep me safe and keep me guarded. And then the balance of making sure that there's a balance so that you're not overwhelmed.
That's super powerful, Laura. Thank you. I bet even if it's not spoken to the families and the people that Honoring Our Fallen serves, the boundaries and the balance are almost like indirectly communicated too. Wow, that's super powerful. That's something that we can all resonate or marinate on and really ponder for a bit for our own lives, because it's not just true for being a professional in providing grief support. It's also true for somebody who's grieving too. So thank you. That's very, very wise. I so appreciate you sharing that, Laura.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And you're right. Like, so as we're grieving, we have to find that balance too. And I had a long talk with a mother of a fallen Marine just yesterday. And she says, my daughter says that she just wants to cry every day. And I said, well, it's okay. Let her cry. Tell her it's okay to cry every day. And I often will talk to families, and and people that I'm serving, and encourage them to allow allow yourself to smile if you want to smile. Allow yourself to be happy if you want to be happy. Allow yourself to have that rough day. And don't I think that we're all guilty, no matter what it is in life. We are all guilty of beating ourselves up. We're all guilty of being our own worst enemy, and we have a choice. We have a choice to be I come from a life of I went through some very um tragic circumstances in my younger childhood life, and some crimes committed against me and things like that. And I remember that all these years I have a choice. I have a choice every day when I wake up. I have a choice to be a survivor or to be a victim. And I can be a victim of whatever circumstance I choose to allow myself to be a victim of. The guy maybe at the grocery store that was mean to me, or someone that gave me a dirty look, or this or that, or whatever the case may be. I have a choice to choose to look the other way and be a survivor and carry on, or to allow myself to be a victim. And some days I think that it's important that we allow ourselves, and victim is very, it's very strong word to use. So maybe that's not appropriate, but allow ourselves to have those days where we need to, we can even look at the Bible and how Jesus took a break. He left and he went up. So we have a choice: take a break, step back, get grounded again, and reassess where we're at in our journey with the grief, or in our journey with, our family, or whatever, and reassess our boundaries. What comes my way, I can either let it affect me negatively, I can let it affect me positively, I can choose to just turn my back and shoo it away. We have the power. We're in control of our own destiny, and we can do anything that we set our minds to do. And I think that it's just important that we all, for self-care, that we take the time to not worry about taking care of everybody else, not worry about everybody else's, but to focus on ourselves. Focus on, do I have clear and set boundaries that protect me and my heart and my well-being? And do I have a plan of action that I'm doing to better myself? And that's part of my self-care and my counseling. Isn't just for me to, make sure that I'm having good, care in the grief that I carry for the people that I serve, but also to make sure that I'm accountable, and that I'm practicing the right practices, and I'm making the right decisions, and I'm not letting, one of the things that I learned in a sermon recently is about ego. And when we let our ego take control, then we're edging God out. And so I asked myself, okay, is this my ego, and am I edging God out of this, or am I looking and putting my ego aside to look at what the best decision is? And do I have to, suck it up and go make any kinds of amends, or verbal, have any communications with someone, say, hey, you know what, I made a mistake. And I think we have to be willing to do that. And I think that sometimes we're fearful of that, or whatever the case may be.
Well, Laura, your words are very empowering. I can tell you're a strong woman of power, and deeply grateful for everything you're sharing. It makes me think about your organization, Honoring Our Fallen, and with the empowerment that you bring, I'm betting you're also a visionary. So I'm going to ask you one last question. With where Honoring Our Fallen is at right now, and perhaps if there's a 5-year vision, where do you want to see yourself as the next few years develop and continue?
That's a great question. And I am a visionary, and I love how God works, because you're asking me the questions, and I've literally spent most of the last 6 months trying to figure out what the 3-year, 5-year road ahead is. Eventually, I would love Honoring Our Fallen to have our own wellness center where we can hold grief workshops and we can hold retreats and things like that. Right now, we have moms retreats and widows retreats, and we use vacation rentals and such to hold those events. And my goal is to expand. I am the only paid staff in the organization. The rest is volunteers, and then our board of directors, of course. And my goal is to hire some staff and to really work on our forward plan, to really get our other chapters of Honoring Our Fallen nationally up and running, and to do what the due diligence that I need to do to ensure, I'm about to turn 50 years old and I'm not going to be around forever. And I want to ensure that the vision of what this organization was and what God has already enabled us to do thus far, that the parameters and the things that need to be put in place for the organization to continue after I'm gone happens. And that I take the time and have the ability to train my succession plan and get the people into place that have the drive and the energy and the passion that I do to serve these families, and bring their own energy into it and bring their own ideas and how we can meld those ideas and grow this into something that's going to sustain long after I'm gone.
I have no doubt in my mind that it's going to happen. I can hear it in your voice. I can feel it between the airwaves because we're meeting on Zoom right now, but it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. And if there's anything that Grief Refuge can help do to support this, we will talk. Laura,
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on the Grief Refuge podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you, Reed. And I really appreciate the opportunity to have you listen. Sometimes I think that, and I know we're wrapping it up, but I think that one of the other things that's important for everybody, and not only that works in the grief world, but even those that are grieving, is that many times I think that I know that I am guilty of it, is we feel like we struggle sometimes for our voice to be heard. And what I've realized is just go out there and do what you know that you're supposed to do what you're called to do. And every door that's supposed to open will open. The ones that don't open, have no fear. It's because there's another door that's going to open, and not that one. And don't feel defeated. Defeat is of the enemy. And so we need to make sure that we don't give the enemy a seat at the table, and don't feel defeated. Just get up, put one foot in front of the other, and keep on marching. We can say that whether it's a weight loss program and we lose 10 pounds, and then Thanksgiving comes. We're about to have that this week, and Thanksgiving comes, and we put on that extra three pounds or whatever. Well, great. You know what? Then it's time to buckle back up after the holidays and get back on track. I think that we're just too often hard on ourselves, like I was mentioning earlier, and I think that sometimes defeat just gets the best of us. So my prayer and my hope is that anybody that's listening to this doesn't feel defeated and feels renewed and re-energized to go out and to be the best that they can be.
Your words are very inspiring, Laura. You're a gift to many. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and your attention regarding this important topic. I'm deeply grateful for your trust in Grief Refuge and our mission. We help the grieving find peace and purpose after loss. This is important work, and although painful at times, it's worth your time and attention for helping to heal your heart, your mind, and your soul. You can get more stories, more guidance and insights, and more grief support on the Grief Refuge app, which I hope you go grab from your phone's app store now. Thank you, take care, keep honoring your grief, be kind to yourself, and talk to you soon.